Welcome back to the School Transportation Nation podcast, party people. Ryan Gray here, editor-in-chief of School Transportation News, joined by my sidekick, Taylor Ekbatani, associate editor. How you doing, Taylor?
Good. I just got back from San Antonio, Texas, so that was a really great trip. But it's great to be back on the podcast.
Absolutely. Oh, we'll dive into that San Antonio trip in a bit. But we banished Tony Corbin to Mammoth. So he is, as we're recording this, he's up in Mammoth, and he might be snowed in. We have some crazy weather here that's really covering California and really all over the nation. So a crazy storm, coast to coast, basically snow. So be safe out there.
Yeah, Ryan, I was talking to Amy Tedens for a small second in Minnesota, and they were expected to get 12 to 24 inches of snow. Like, wow.
Wow. Yeah. So again, be safe out there. A lot of folks were off this past week. So Tony was up in skiing with his family for their ski break. They have a week off for skiing, so isn't that nice? But of course, I don't think anybody anticipated getting stuck in a blizzard, which is very rare around these parts of California. But it is what it is. So again, really cold weather and snow and rain and sleet and whatnot. But like the post office, school buses keep rolling out there. So again, be safe. A little bit later, Taylor, you're going to be speaking with our good friend Al Karam, Director of Transportation for Shenendehowa Central Schools in New York. Have had him in a couple of articles recently. We're going to be talking, or you're going to be talking with him about a little bit about electric school buses and diesel. I know he's a big proponent of diesel. So we're going to unpack that. And really, that's a good segue for our March issue. So here we are. We are in the month of March. Crazy. Third week of the year. We just put that issue to the printer just a couple weeks ago. It's now out on stonline.com. You'll be receiving it in the mail soon. And speaking of diesel, Taylor, you have copious amounts to say and to write about with diesel. Can you unpack that a little bit for us?
Yeah, I think I just sent you my 3,000 word article, and you
did. Yeah, the what didn't make the magazine, it was only like 2,600 words. So look out for that online. There's a lot going on with that right now.
Yeah, I think I kind of looked at it from the angle of a balanced approach to achieving cleaner emissions and healthier air quality, right? And I think electric is standing out as a option because it's being talked about all the time and because it's being pushed from a federal level and a state level as well with all of these zero emission mandates. So I'm kind of looking at what other school districts are doing, propane, CNG, renewable diesel, and how that plays a role in today's kind of era, I guess.
Absolutely. Talking with folks out there about diesel and it's great that we have Al on because, as I mentioned earlier, Al Karam is a big proponent of diesel and pointing out how far that fuel has come because of regulations from the EPA. And of course, this is all set up by the new rulemaking that EPA has set to be implemented fully this month, further reducing NOx emissions. And really, it's the emergence of electric, zero emissions. There's, potential possibly of some hydrogen out there eventually. But really, when you talk about zero emissions, you're talking about battery electric right now. And, for the most part, out of the tailpipe is what we're talking about. Although a lot of folks, as we've been discussing as well, are still using fuel-fired heaters to warm their buses. We talked about how cold it is right now. Folks just cannot get the range that they need, and especially when they're using auxiliary heating and HVAC on their buses. So I know some folks have told us that out there, First Student, for example, they don't operate electric buses without the fuel-fired heaters. It's really minimal in terms of the amount of fuel they're using, but that's not a zero emissions vehicle, per se. So I think that, it's about that range anxiety. It's about that infrastructure that we've been talking so much about that really still has a lot of people very anxious about the push to going all electric. So I know Al, he's not against electric, but what he is, a proponent of is where it makes sense. And of course, New York's one of those states that has that mandate coming up by 2035 that all new school bus purchases will need to be zero emissions. And again, today that means battery electric. What that means, 12 years from now, we'll have to wait and see. And one of the things that I'm really interested in too is looking at the finer details of these mandates. Okay, they say, and there's several states now that are on board with this, and California is looking at it. But what does that really mean? Does that mean that the bus needs to be registered in the state? See, we haven't seen that detail yet. I think those are the finer points. Because what's to stop you if you're in New York from driving over to Pennsylvania and buying the bus there? And it could be diesel. So there's a lot that still needs to be figured out. So it'll be really interesting to, hear your conversation with Al in a little bit. Also, too, Taylor, you had as I mentioned earlier, you had a San Antonio trip recently. What was that about?
Yeah, so I went down to San Antonio for the National Conference on Education, and that's when they named the Superintendent of the Year. So if you guys haven't seen those articles, there's a couple articles on the 4 finalists online, and then, of course, the winner from New York, which is ironic because we were just talking about New York. But it was a really great trip. I ate a lot of tacos. I think I told you guys.
Yes. I was going to ask you, so what was your favorite tacos that you had?
Oh, it's so tough. I had El Pastor tacos, which I am a sucker for because I love pineapples, and then steak fajitas. So, really those are the 2 ties.
Very good.
But I also went to San Antonio Independent School District while I was there. So shout out to Nathan Graff. He's the director of transportation there for showing me around his facility and meeting with his team, which was really great. And one of the things, Ryan, that really stood out to me on my trip, Albert Ross, he's the driver trainer there. He took me in one of his new propane buses, and he loves his bus. I mean, this is a guy I walked in and it's all decorated from Mardi Gras. He's got streamers all up on the roof and everything. He is great. He really takes great care of his bus. But he demonstrated for me this Wingman fusion technology from Bendix. And I mean, it's seriously like has that car feel, right? You cross over the double lines and all of a sudden an audible warning sounds. And then he set on cruise control and he, measured that distance between the car in front of him. And then if he got too close, the bus slowed down. So it was really cool to not only hear that, but to experience it and feel it in a school bus in real life.
Absolutely. So you're talking about the ADAS, the Advanced Driver Assistance Systems that, like you mentioned, so many of us with newer cars and trucks, we have those features. School buses do too. So this March issue, coming back to that, we have a lot of technology in there. I talk about that tech race in the yellow space in my column this month. And I mentioned ADAS and, we have articles on tablets and student ridership tracking. A lot of times that word tracking kind of has some negative connotations. And I actually have spoken to some folks that haven't been allowed to get that approved yet because of that tracking title to it. And people worried about, well, what are you tracking and about our kids? But the folks that are using it, they're seeing so many advantages. And it's one of the faster growing tech pieces that we are monitoring. And and what we're hearing from readers, from vendors, that finally it seems that a lot of folks are starting to use the full extent of their technology suite, their technology stack. For a while, when we were talking about GPS, it was that AVL aspect of it, the vehicle location. And it's really, blossomed to a lot of areas, of course, routing, AI optimization now. I was mentioning the tablets, the turn-by-turn directions, the ability for the student ridership, kids to scan on and off the bus. You have apps that then communicate with the parents to tell them where the bus is, when it will be late, if it will be late, when the kids and where the kids scanned off and on the bus. Wi-Fi hotspots. We have, you mentioned the ADAS. It's just really, growing at breakneck speeds, where we have the school bus that still looks so much like it did 30, 40 years ago, but inside the brains, if you will, are just completely different. Everything that's done for fleet management, inventory controls, modernizing the punch card for employees, for drivers when they're logging on to get their shift started. So, check out that March issue, stonline.com. We have the issue up in digital format. And again, you should be receiving in the mail very soon. And also, too, talking about the Superintendent of the Year, again, want to congratulate Dr. Kevin McGowan, Brighton Central Schools near Rochester, New York. You can read that article from Taylor on stonline.com. And next month in April, we're really diving into that, aren't we? We have our superintendents and school administrator issue. So we're going to have a lot of information on that.
Yes, and also read the article on San Antonio ISD at stonline.com, Brian. I can't forget that one.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Taylor, I don't know if you remember this or not, but the original dynamic duo, it was a TV show in the 60s, Batman and Robin. Pow, bam. You remember that? Well, there's a new dynamic duo on the scene, and that's TransFinder's Route Finder Plus and Wayfinder. Route Finder Plus is TransFinder's award-winning, industry-leading routing solution. And Wayfinder, speaking of those apps, is the driver app that is changing the way drivers and substitute drivers approach their routes. Together, this pair provides the winning combination to help combat your school transportation woes, including driver shortages, inefficiency, student discipline issues, while helping you improve the driver experience. Route Finder Plus is intuitive, browser-based, and includes route optimization to help you build the most efficient routes. Wayfinder, the driver app, provides turn-by-turn instructions, allows users to take attendance, and works seamlessly with Plus. To learn what this dynamic duo can do for you, email getplus@transfinder.com. That's getplus@transfinder.com, or call 800-373-3609. 800-373-3609. Okay, Taylor, let's get to your conversation with Al Karam, Director of Transportation for Shenendehowa Central Schools in New York.
All right, guys. So I am back, and I am here with another special guest for the School Transportation Nation podcast. This is Alfred Karam. He's the Director of Transportation for Shenendehowa Central Schools in New York. I was practicing all morning that one. So welcome, Alfred. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you. And you said that perfectly. So you did a great job there on the intro.
Thank you. Thank you. Everyone knows I've been having some hard times with the school districts lately, so I've been practicing beforehand, but I got this one. So we appreciate you joining us. I know you said earlier that it was, the weather was cold, icy, snowy.
We had a little bit of a storm past day or so, and today we're cleaning up. There's a lot of ice on the vehicles, so we want to get all that, make sure the roof hatch is open and that sort of thing, and clean out the bus compound. So we're ready to reopen school on Monday.
Oh, so you guys closed school this week?
This is the winter break right now.
Oh, okay.
This week.
Gotcha. Yeah. Oh, well, that's good. At least it didn't interfere with schooling or anything like that.
No, it didn't.
Okay.
Thank God, no.
Awesome. So as we kind of record this podcast, we're kind of wrapping up Love the Bus Month. And I know we kind of talked earlier, but you don't want to just focus on 1 month to kind of support your school bus drivers and transportation. Can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that's correct. I don't want to focus just on a small period during the year to highlight transportation and the employees. We have 8 safety meetings a year. So we highlight employees, either the entire department or specific employees if they have done something above and beyond. We actually give them some really nice certificates, because I think it's very important that we try to keep the transportation story at the forefront. Otherwise, we get buried. We're in the education system. And of course, the focus is on education, on the kids. And transportation usually takes a back seat all the way in the back, and I try to push it back to the front. And I do other things too. If we're doing something special or something neat happen, I take pictures, throw them on my LinkedIn account. The district picks it up, and then they spread it out on their social media. So that's what we're engaged in all the time to, again, try to stay kind of like fight through all the flag that's out there and all the noise and what have you, and keep some focus on transportation.
Yeah, I love that. It's not just pushing transportation 1 month of the year, but kind of making yourself known throughout the entire year that, hey, we're still a very important part of the education system.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I also do, whenever the opportunity comes up, local news people, I never say no to them. And they also help, especially, in this era of driver shortage, extreme driver shortage. They help me get that word out, and it costs $0. So it's free advertisement.
There you go. So before we kind of jump into the harder questions, can you kind of give us a little background on who is Alfred? For those listening and maybe don't recognize your name, how did you kind of get started in transportation, and what's kind of your story?
Sure. So I spent 25 years in the United States Marine Corps. I retired as a master gunnery sergeant. Transportation was and logistics was my specialty. And so when I retired, I was looking for a new occupation that still dealt with people, people focused, and within the transportation realm. And of course, school transportation is that world. And I was able to walk right on in as an assistant director, even though I never had any experience, quote, with yellow buses. My transportation experience was on the tactical vehicle side of the house, although we have green and white school buses in the military, believe it or not. And so, I walked into an assistant director position back in 2000, and here I am. I'm in my second district right now as a director. Shenendehowa Central School District is the largest public school district in the capital region of the state of New York. We have about 217 buses, around 270, 280 employees. We serve just a little bit over 10,000 students. About 9,700 of them come here on our campus. Our campus, by the way, rivals any state college in the state of New York. That's how big it is.
Wow.
The district is about 88 square miles. We go to about 40, 50 schools in district and out of district, both private, parochial, public, and special needs placements.
Wow. And I know when we were talking earlier, you said you even have one route that goes like 4 to 5 hours or something one way.
That's correct. So we transport one student to Rochester, New York. It's about a 5-hour ride from here, one way, 5 hours back. We do that twice a week. We take them out, drop them off, bring them back at the end of the week.
So definitely an expansive transportation operation you guys are running there.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So is there any technology that has helped you that you guys have implemented, or any technology that maybe you're looking at going forward?
Sure. Technology, obviously, like a lot of school districts now, we have our routing software, field trip software. We have the live GPS, which is great. We rely on that very, very heavily. About 5 years ago, we implemented on a limited basis the tablets to help our substitute drivers, because they're the ones that need most help when they first start out. So the tablets are great for that. Potentially, we could push for tablets to have it throughout the fleet, down the road. Although for us, because we're so large, anytime we talk technology fleet-wise, you're looking minimum $250,000, for
Wow.
equipment, whatever. So, and that's a lot of money when you're, again, competing against the education dollar. We are also right now in the middle of learning about, and then we're going to test the parent app to also help on that end, maybe stop some of the phone calls that are constant every day about where's my bus and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure with, weather that you guys experience there, having that parent app might help a little bit, just with, students not waiting at the bus stop as long, stuff like that.
That's correct. And that's one of the reasons behind our push to try that. We actually tested it about 5 years ago. It didn't work quite well for us. There was too much latency in where the bus was versus what the parents were seeing. And it would have not worked for us. We've changed our GPS in terms of what we were buying, what the plan was. So we're hoping that the plan that we're on now is going to get us to that almost real-time notification for the parents, which would be great.
Okay. Yeah, Parents Apps was definitely a article that we had in the March issue, so that we covered that. And so it's interesting that you brought that up. But another article that I actually talked to you about was looking at the EPA 2027 emissions regulations and how that kind of plays into the future of diesel. And I know we had a really good conversation about it. And if you guys haven't read the March issue, it should be out by the time that you're listening to this. So definitely go give it a read. There's a lot of great articles in there. I'm biased. I love the diesel article. But we kind of talked about it, Alfred, but can you kind of enlighten the listeners a little bit? What is kind of your thoughts on diesel? And you guys are running a lot of it, obviously, at your operation. So with the upcoming EPA emissions, where do you guys stand?
Yeah, so I'm still partial to diesel. And honestly, I've been through all the EPA emission standards that have affected the diesel buses in particular. And none of them really have scared me off and shied me away from it. Has diesel become a little bit more complicated to maintain and work on? Yes. But still, I think you can still get that bang for the buck, if you will, out of diesel. So I'm not really concerned with whatever the next standard is going to be relative to diesel. I have other concerns, not related to diesel, but related to electric. We can certainly talk about that. And I've given presentations on that here locally to elected officials, to my local colleagues on some of the challenges that I think we're going to face. I think diesel, I'd like to see it here for the long haul and not to be totally discarded. I think that would be the wrong way, especially in the Northeast, for us to get away from.
Mm-hmm. And if you want to just open that can of worms real quick, we can kind of talk about some of the challenges that you see with electric, just especially for your guys' district and for, maybe New York as a whole, because I know New York is one of those states that is really pushing electric vehicles. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it's by 2035.
That's correct. So actually, there's two key dates here. 2027, according to the state governor, her mandate, we can only buy electric buses come 2027.
Oh, wow.
And by 2035, we have to be fully electric or fully zero emission. I don't know if there'll be another, hopefully, I'm hoping for hydrogen to come along, but let's say it doesn't, we would have to be fully electric by 2035. And, I don't live just today. I live in the future. I'm always looking ahead into the future. And when I look 10, 12 years down the road and I see 217 electric buses sitting out here in the compound with however many chargers, let's say 217 chargers if we go individual, or half of that if we go a charger for every two buses, that in itself is going to present a lot of problems that nobody's talking about. Why? Because chargers are computers. That's what they are. They're computerized electric dispensers. And everything I've read about that so far from around the world says that there are problems with these chargers. At a minimum, 25% of any fleet or any city that has them, about 25% of those chargers don't work on any given day. So can you imagine in a fleet of 217 buses, if I was to walk in one morning, that equates to about 58 buses potentially could not be charged. Mm-hmm. I would have to call my superintendent and say, hey, you got to shut the school down. There's nothing I can do for you. And that challenge is not presented with diesel or gasoline, but it will be presented with electric buses.
Mm-hmm. And I know you're not against electric per se, but not for an entire fleet. And I think that's kind of what you were giving at, is that you still need to have buses on standby or buses that can do those longer, 5-hour trip that you need to do.
That's correct. I am not anti-electric cars, electric trucks, electric buses. Absolutely not. I don't believe that we should be forced into going 100% electric. We need a combination, and that choice, that operational choice really for us here in the state of New York has been taken away from us. And so I fear for the future because I just don't see it as being bright. I mean, just look at, for our operation here right now, we have 1.68 megawatts of power coming in. If we go fully electric, we would need at a minimum 6 megawatts of power. That's a whole lot more than what charges the Empire State Building, just to put it in context.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. it's a lot of electric power that has to be brought in just for this operation here, you know, and then there'll be a whole lot more around the state to include all these businesses up and down, you know, where we operate out of. So I just don't see this being a viable way to go. But hey, sometimes the only way to learn a lesson is to go through it, right? And see what is thrown at you.
And speaking of, you guys ordered your first 4 electric school buses. So when are those expected? You know, what can you kind of expect with that?
Yeah, so great question. We put in a letter of intent, and what happens now is that those buses will go through, you know, their build cycle. We're getting the IC buses at 315 kilowatt capacity. So we have to now wait until, one, the board has to approve that recommendation, which, by the way, I'll be making to them next month. Then the voters got to vote on that purchase. And that's another one of the challenges in the state of New York, is that voters actually approve or disapprove your bus purchase. And I've been involved in my other district where the bus purchase plan failed to pass the muster, and you don't get buses, you know, or you may end up getting half, or whatever the case might be. Anyway, come May, and let's say the voters approve that, then we will, you know, start working with our bus vendor to, you know, look at the timing of when those buses are going to arrive, look at the timing of when the chargers can be purchased, because you have to bring those in, you have to install them, and get them ready for the buses. So.
And I think a big distinction to be made there is that, and we do it all the time on the podcast or, you know, at our conferences, is that there's money out there for electric school buses, you know, get that money. And you guys haven't been so lucky in getting that funding. So you're actually looking to purchase these electric school buses, you know, with your budget dollars. So I think that's not also talked about a lot, is all these districts are finding that money and being able to purchase the buses. And that's been a different case for you guys.
That's correct. And again, there's a lot of, I'll call it misinformation. I don't know, maybe sleight of hand, whatever, but that is correct. The districts that are getting the EPA funding, for example, or here in the state of New York, NYSERDA also gives out some money, are tribal, rural, or city. We're neither one of those. And we did apply to help us with these 4 buses, and we weren't one of the, quote, lucky ones. So we have to actually fund 4 buses. And because I went with the high end, the 315 kilowatt battery, you're looking at about 460 some odd thousand a bus. The charger that will service 2 buses, that's around 73,000. And we're not even talking installation. We're not even talking about also entering some sort of contract with the charger vendor so we can monitor these chargers and be able to troubleshoot them, manipulate them, see what they're doing online. All that is going to cost money, which, by the way, nobody's talking about that as part of your total cost of ownership, which again is a sleight of hand as we try to sell these buses and push the electric buses on these districts. Everybody's saying the TCO is going to be lower than diesel. You know, I beg to differ. When you start adding a $10, $20, $30, $40, $50, $60, $70,000 charger to that TCO of the bus, there's not going to be any savings there. I just don't buy it.
Well, and I think that's, you know, kind of why you put out the bid for the 4 electric buses, because you want to experience that for yourself and not just have this, you know, reading about it, but actually get these buses and run them and see how they operate for you guys.
That's correct. Yeah. And just as a note, we opted to go for the high end, both on the charger side and on the bus side, because again, I'm not thinking about today or next year. I'm thinking those 4 buses, if we get no more, but just those 4 buses, they're going to be with us for minimum 12 years. Well, I want to make sure that in 10, 12 years that we can get the most out of them, out of that battery pack after degradation of the battery and what have you. So, yeah, again, if there's anything I can give my colleagues out there, any advice is don't think about today. Think about what the landscape is going to be 10, 12 years from now, because you'll be dealing with that equipment as it ages at that time. The other thing nobody's talking about is that chargers, because they're like your computer, right? You guys have been going through, how many times you've changed your cell phone, how many times you've changed your computers, right? Same thing with these chargers. They're computerized. They're going to have to be changed out. And what I'm reading, and I averaged this out based on the different studies I looked at, probably around 8 years or so, you have to buy new chargers. That's an ongoing cost, by the way, that nobody's talking about when it comes to electric vehicles.
Yeah, we're going to have to reach out maybe to some districts who've been running them longer and kind of see if they've had to replace chargers or what that kind of looks like.
Indeed.
All right, awesome. Well, yeah, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your insight with us. And I do encourage everyone to read the March issue, learn more. We have a lot of great articles this month in March. So I'm really proud of this issue. So definitely check it out. But thank you again so much, Alfred, for jumping on with us.
You're welcome, and appreciate what SCN is doing. I love reading your magazine. A lot of good information all the time. Thank you much.
Great conversation, Taylor and Al. Thanks so much. Very informative. And of course, thank you to our episode sponsor, TransFinder. Visit stnonline.com for the latest on everything going on in the school bus and student transportation industry. And don't forget, register now for STN Expo Indianapolis. That's going to be June 2nd through the 6th. And STN Expo Reno, July 14th through the 19th at stnexpo.com. We have some early bird registration still in play. The super early bird registration for Indy expires this week, I think in like a couple days, so get on it, folks. You don't want to miss that savings. And remember to subscribe to the STN podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And tell your friends. We love those 5-star ratings. Share the word. Guess what, friends? We've reached the end, but there's always next week, and there's, again, always plenty of articles out there. And if you ever have article ideas or you're wondering, asking questions, want to know what the latest on certain issues is, email us at info@stnonline.com, and one of us will get to you very shortly. And thank you so much for listening. We'll catch you next time, friends.